Awesome. So good morning, good afternoon, evening to you all. Thank you all for joining live or watching the recording. This is Service Fabric webcast number 63. It is not under NDA, so we will be sharing the recording after the call to the YouTube channel and the Azure Connection community. If you have any questions throughout the session, feel free to add them to the chat or come off mute. So without further ado, I will hand it over to Jeffrey to kick us off.
Great. I'll start sharing my screen here. So for anyone who doesn't know, I'm Jeff. I work on Service Fabric Explorer, and I was going to walk over some of the features that have been recently added with 9.0. There's a couple pretty exciting ones here. Let's get the right screen. So I'm going to show 4 different features. These are the main ones, but I'm also going to share a link to a GitHub issue that runs down the entire list. So you can get an idea of all the things that were added besides this, because there's a couple smaller features which are pretty convenient, but more for brevity, just going to cover the big ones that are probably going to be the most impactful for people. So I've just now posted the GitHub issue in the chat. So for anyone who either wants to follow along from there or read the additional fixes and little quality of life, you can see it there. Cool. So with the first one, we'll start with the replication view. So this one's pretty useful. And the idea here is it gives a little bit more insight into what's going on as far as replication with your partitions. So you can see here, we have a new tile-based layout, and this gives you information on like how much of the queue status is being used. And this can be useful for knowing if maybe there's a lot of work getting done and maybe you're seeing either stuff going a little bit slow or high memory usage. And then you can also see more information about like the state of replication. Now, this can be useful sometimes if you're investigating where it feels like maybe transactions are slow, and you can go to a page like this and you can get an idea of, are they slowing down or speeding up? And then along with that, it's showing the new goal of cleaning up and modernizing some of the styling that SFX is used. So here you can see a lot more rounded edges, cleaner lines, a lot more consistent UX. So then going on to the next feature, which is probably a little bit more exciting. So if people have used the metrics tab before in SFX, it's not great. It can be a little bit tough to read, especially with comparing points. So stuff like looking at primary replica counts. So when you're trying to see maybe how well balanced your cluster is, we've gone through and we've cleaned up this quite a bit. So now you can compare multiple metrics together. You can also have a lot more control over which ones you want to look at. So pretty often you'll only necessarily care about one node type at a time. So now it's much easier to just focus it down to one, along with the ability to put it in a different view. So this is actually going to lead into the next feature that we have here, which is the improved cluster map, but showing it a little bit ahead. You can see now that you have the option of both displaying it as a chart and also seeing these metrics laid out across the fault domains and the upgrade domains. So this can be pretty useful when you want to see, is there a particular area that maybe is having a lot more of the load placed into it? And so now to lead into that next one, the cluster map itself. So we'll talk about it more in this page to go over some of the stuff that's included here. So for people who've used the cluster map before, you've probably noticed that as soon as you maybe get like 10, 15 nodes, it already becomes a pretty long page. But what we can see here is that we've tried to condense a lot of the information so it doesn't grow nearly as long, along with giving you a lot more information across the upgrade domains and the fault domains. So you can see on the sides here, we kind of have counters for some useful information. So now you have stuff like the health state for them spread across, down node counts, nodes that are disabling or being disabled, and repair jobs. So the left is stuff that's in progress, the right side being how many were recently done. And then kind of similar to what we just saw is you can now start also organizing it exactly how you want to see it. So the main options we have are changing which node types you display and also being able to group this by node types. So it's much easier to see the shape of your cluster. And then I'm actually going to switch to sharing another screen here to show one of the bigger improvements that should be pretty useful is changes that we have made to the upgrade. So This is something people probably saw in, I believe, 8.2 is where we started overhauling some of the displays for giving information about upgrade states. And so back then, we had started changing it to use more graphs for laying out, pulling the big information forward. And so now we've gone a step further, and we're also doing stuff like pulling out the monitoring and health policies. So it's a little bit more clear exactly what the numbers you're working with. And along with that is we also wanted to make the upgrade failure overview a little bit more clear to work with. So now we give a much better layout, more consistent, kind of goes back to a lot of the time has been spent improving the UX and the UI. As you've probably noticed as well, more consistent coloring, a lot more shadows. And so here you can see it's a lot more clear what phase something failed in. And this is still a multi-step thing, and we still have improvements to go even further with this and try and give more clear information on exactly how, say, like a given UD failed. And then some of the pretty minor updates is to try and make stuff a little bit easier to work with. We've added stuff like closing the tree view on the left side and expanding it back into the same state, which can be pretty awkward, especially when you're working, say, with like smaller screens and you're trying to constantly slide this over. This should hopefully make that a little bit more convenient. And then a couple of the, let's see if I can switch back again, is the image store viewer. For people that have been using it, maybe have noticed that sometimes it can be a bit unresponsive. So we've gone through and we've made steps to make that feel a lot snappier. So now when you're navigating between folders, it should respond a lot quicker, and it should also let you know when it's loading them in and when it's not. This is more so something you see with like large image store viewers, but you also can now switch the navigation. Before we kind of get stuck if you're loading into one library, you can now switch that in the spot. So it should feel more like an actual file explorer. So with that, those are the big new features that people should be able to see. Does anyone have any questions?
Thank you, Jeffrey. This is awesome. So with you're currently the only person online today because we changed the schedule. So if you have any questions, please go ahead, unmute and ask.
Yeah.
Okay, I will take it as no questions. Thank you, Jeffrey. Appreciate the nice demo. Really appreciate it. And are there any other general questions about SFX or Service Fabric in general?
Yeah, say I for one am excited. This all looks great.
Oh, love to hear it.
I've been enjoying the new experience. It's sad switching back to the old one. Haven't needed to do that for a while.
Good.
And it all looks great.
Yeah, I believe that there were two main bugs that were the only reasons people had to switch back. Let me scroll down, where there was an issue with removing by app type group, and I think that was one of the last two bugs that people had to swap back for, which it's now fixed with 9.0. So hopefully at this point, you should never have to switch back. And along with that, the old version should it should get removed with 9.1. But at this point, as you said, it's probably not something most people even think about. So hopefully that shouldn't cause any break in experience for anybody.
Yeah, pretty much. I guess the only thing I've seen kind of lingering is especially if if I spin up a local dev cluster, it will tend to report on the the right side that everything is fine and dandy and spun up. The left side will not necessarily show the same without a refresh. I haven't found a ticket about that yet, but anyway. But
yeah,
just
if there's repo steps for that, yeah, I would gladly be interested in looking into that to see maybe what's going on there. Thank you.
Absolutely. But then otherwise, just a big thank you to you for I guess the quick response time to respond to issues and accept pull requests. I think I've sent them your way so far. So
yes,
thank you.
Yes, I believe it actually was one of the renaming ones, right?
Yeah.
Perfect. Yep. No, I'm always super happy to see
just little things, but
oh no, it still helps. Absolutely.
It's real nice to just have the active response there. So thank you.
Yeah, no, we try to. And there's going to be potentially another person who's also going to be working on SFX. So we might have some other features coming up a little bit quicker. So ETA is on that, not super clear. One of the things I would like to bring up is that for some of the people that have used the like SFX standalone before, it's kind of like this wrapped SFX. There is progress being made to improve that and use the new SFX with it. So hopefully one of these upcoming community calls, we can give a little bit more update on that as well. So now you can have the wrapped SFX experience into a native app where you can also maintain a list of clusters in there. So you shouldn't have to switch between tabs as much once we have that out.
Right.
And I guess as one of the guys from the SF side here, I can try and answer any general SF questions. Got a little bit better with those over time.
I don't have any this week.
Hey Jeffrey, since it's recorded real quick, do you mind showing people how to actually submit a bug and how that kind of raw development process works real quick?
Absolutely. So my screen should still be sharing, right?
Yeah.
Perfect. Yes. So up here in this top right, you'll see we actually have 3 different options here. So you can report a bug on Service Fabric specifically. So this is maybe say if you have an issue with the runtime or PowerShell. And then if you're having an issue specifically with SFX, you can open one directly for Service Fabric Explorer. You can see here, this is kind of where the running list is. And then every once in a while, I will put out bugs where they are kind of these cumulative lists. This is actually the one I had shown before, where you can run through if you want to see a couple more other things, like event store improvements. We didn't cover it here because we didn't have a whole bunch of events put in here. But let's get back to the last one and opening a support case. So this kind of goes to, if you do have an issue in general, this would at least bring you to the place for getting started. But that's a good point to bring up. Yes, this little bug icon, if something weird happens, that's probably where you want to go.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jeffrey. This is awesome. Really appreciate it.
Was happy to come on.
So with if you have any other further questions, please let us know. We pretty much quite a few of us are from the Service Fabric team, and we're kind of here if you have any questions. Otherwise, we can give a considerable amount of your time back.
Sure. No, I guess I've got a couple. Gosh, am I the only one that's not Service Fabric?
Today
Wow.
we've got your full attention.
Special call today. Great. Yeah, sure. No, I guess things I've been working on recently. YARP. Is there any timeline on when that might get host name routing support instead of just path?
There's not a definitive timeline right now. We're still working on what we can commit to due to some internal resourcing shifting. So it is GA, it is available. I believe you filed the issue online. So I'll ping the main dev inside internally and see if he can reply with some rough ETA.
Okay, great. Yeah, I guess is just curious about where that is going. Is that intended that one day it will just be, one of those system-based resources that's just running there? It's kind of weird deploying an SF package from somewhere and just popping it straight into the cluster.
Can you? I'm not completely following the question, but
yeah. So I guess is the intent that in the long run, this is just something that I can just turn off and on the on Service Fabric itself, or is the intent always that I'm essentially just downloading a completely pre-built application and just moving it into the cluster to run?
It's a great question. Okay, I follow. So I'll answer broadly because none of this is set in stone. But right now, the current thinking is that we keep these components or these new applications decoupled from the runtime as part, kind of like similar to SFX, as Jeffrey just demoed, to allow us to have a little more flexibility in development and not be tied to the broader SF releases. So while we intended for them to be decoupled, we are working on and thinking about how to streamline them or make them more integrated, feel like they're more integrated. So they're more of a push button experience. I will say similar to something like the backup restore service. So as part of deploying a cluster, whether through ARM or the portal, essentially be ideally in my head, just, a fly in the wall kind of thought right now, but we've had some internal discussions about this, but, be able to select that, have that be deployed as part of the overall deployment. So you don't have to go externally, like you said, download it and install an application all kind of on the side.
Yeah. Yes, it's just kind of a weird thing because I guess I downloaded the repo and thought, okay, what do I do? Oh, it says to start it. Okay, well, it works. That's
you've heard similar feedback around like things like Fabric Observer, which have been maturing rapidly and becoming critical components for other customers. So similar vein, right? They want to be able to have that kind of just deployed along with the cluster. That's part of the native one-click experience, if you will. So
yeah. Okay, cool. Cool. Gosh, what else? No, I think that may be it for this week.
Awesome.
Sorry, Bill has thrown me off. I have too many notes for too many other things this week.
No, I get it. I totally get it. And we really appreciate the fact that you were flexible enough to join us despite the fact that we moved the meeting to a Wednesday.
Oh, of course.
Yeah, we'll try to keep it more consistent. Continue with the Thursday schedule and keep it more consistent moving forward. But appreciate it.
Great,
So,
thank you.
yeah, and we will continue to monitor GitHub issues as always. If you have questions, just feel free to send us a ping. We do look at all the, inputs that we get. So, yeah. So
that does remind me. There was some relevant question that someone asked in the last couple of days on Yammer. I forget what. I don't know. Oh yeah, application insights. Is there any chance that that's going to be refreshed at all for modern Service Fabric?
I'm not. Can you explain the question a little bit more?
Yeah. So there's a repo for how to install App Insights to Service Fabric, and I think the last update on it was 5 or 6 years ago. I shared a link to it in the chat. While the package, best I can tell, works, it's of course the installation steps as presented are not accurate anymore. They're for a distant old version of this .NET in general, and it's not really clear how it ties in. That stuff, I guess, how it's populated. That it's even you access it in the same way in application insights. How you potentially use that in the larger workspace context. So just kind of curious if there's if that's something on your team that that you work on, or if that's an application insights problem, or would that get any kind of an update to reflect, I guess, modern telemetry capture?
Yeah, that's a excellent question. So as a general theme that we're trying to do is we have quite a few samples out there. It's not just this one, but we have been trying to make updates to all of those. Some of those samples are pretty old and are kind of no longer functional. So we do have a team who is currently kind of working on it. We are making progress in that space. And if you could just point me to this this particular sample, I will kind of follow up on it and figure out what the status is for it. You're probably right. It probably doesn't work. There are some samples that we haven't kind of followed up on a while, but we will try to kind of make sure.
Just even at a minimum, the README just needs an overhaul. The instructions are just wrong at this point. But yeah, no, that'd be great.
Yeah, Absolutely. So there are times when, we don't kind of monitor all the different repos and samples out there. So just a pointer is probably helpful. Yeah.
For sure. Okay, fair enough. Okay, that's really all I have.
Sounds good. Thank you so much again for joining in. Megilla, back to you.
Sounds good. Thank you, team, for that great presentation. Thanks, Whit, for all of your wonderful questions. I did put a survey in the chat, so tell us what you think about this session. Of course, we will post this recording to the Yammer community and to the YouTube channel. If anyone has any questions at any other time, feel free to ask, and we will make sure that it gets back to the Service Fabric team. Once again, thank you all for your time, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Take care.